Welcome to a Funky Loops Crochet tutorial. Today we are looking at overlay crochet mosaic, and we are going to be looking today at how to follow a chart. A lot of people will say, oh, I can do this, but I only can follow the written instructions. I can't follow from the chart. When I first started overlay mosaic crochet, I only could follow the instructions as well, which is great because it tells you exactly what to do. There's nothing wrong with just following that. But then once I learned how to follow the chart, usually I find that the chart is easier. So it's just for you to see how you would do that, and then you can decide which version you think is easier. So let's see what information we have on the chart. This is obviously just a very simple chart, just a sort of a zigzag. And what's important to remember with this chart is that it's going to show you what it will look like when it's finished, not what it looks like while you're doing it. And that can be confusing because remember, with overlay mosaic, we are working 2 rows below, so it's further up the pattern before we maybe can see the pattern start to come. So that can confuse us sometimes when we're maybe working with, say, a white yarn, but the stitches look blue on the picture. And vice versa, which can sometimes confuse people. So we're going to explain that. Next thing we have is our row numbers down the side. So that's straightforward enough. We always remember in mosaic crochet, we're always going from right to left if we're right-handed. We don't turn it round, so all our rows are going that way. So the numbers just tell us what to do. We usually have our edge stitches. So these are the stitches that don't form the actual pattern. These are usually standing crochets, either standing double crochet, or that would be standing single crochet, sorry, if you're in the US. And those are usually then hidden by a border when we come to do the border later on. But there are these ones here, which also have usually the colours, so they're usually written or coloured in the alternate colours that you're going to be using, so your main colour and your contrast colour, and that kind of reminds you what row you're on as well. In my patterns, they do have a 0 marked in here, but that might be on your pattern, that might be a D for double crochet or an S for single crochet, or it could be a little arrow or something like that. You would have to check the actual designer's pattern to let you know that, but there'll be something that will tell you that these are the edge stitches and what you would do. Sometimes there might be more than one, sometimes there are 2. On here, just depending on what type of blanket you're going to do and how the person has decided to do the border. So the actual pattern then is in between these 2 parts, and we have to look and see, do we do a back loop crochet or do we do a forward or front loop crochet? Now, as you know, with overlay mosaic crochet, there are 2 main stitches that you do, which is in UK terms a back loop double crochet and a front loop treble crochet. For US terms, that would be a back loop single crochet and a front loop double crochet. Now in my patterns, I just shorten that to forward and back. So F for forward, which would be what's done in the front loop crochet, B for back, done in the back loops crochet. And that way, it doesn't matter whether it's UK or US terms, it's the same thing to be able to read. F for forward, meaning the ones that come down in front of the pattern, B for back, the ones that come in the back. So let's have a look at this chart. Now the first thing with any chart is that each square represents 1 stitch. So your pattern would obviously tell you how many to start with, and it would depend on how many pattern repeats you were doing to be able to work this out. But let's just say we're just doing this part, you would just count the number of squares that go across. In this case it's 22, and we would do our chain. Now remember, if we are doing that, we would have 1 extra chain because we skip that chain to start our double crochets. So you would chain 23 and then double crochet or US single crochet into each one of the first stitches, into each one of the chain stitches. And that's what I've done already just to start us off. So we're ready with row 1. So that's row 1 completed. Now let's look at row 2. So row 2 is then going to be in my contrast colour. In this case, I've got this darker blue colour. I look along and I see that these stitches look white, and that's what can confuse people because I'm using this dark colour now, but it doesn't look like that on the pattern. That is because in the row above, we're going to cover these up. So the thing to think about is ignore what the pattern looks like in terms of the colour and you're only looking for the crosses. The crosses are our forward stitches, our front loop stitches. If we do not have a cross, then we are doing a back loop stitch. So when I look across row 2, I can see some are white and some are blue, but there are no X's at all. They are all back loop crochets. So I'll finish off that one because we're going to then start our new row. Remembering that we start with our standing double crochet, which would normally be started with a slip knot. We have our slip knot here. We put it into our first stitch. And that's our standing double crochet, which is just our border stitch. Okay, so as we just said on this pattern, all the way across, it's just going to be back stitches. So we're going into our back loops all the way across. And I'll just clarify it. If you were normally doing crochet, you go under both of these hoops or loops here, but with the back loop double crochet, we go sort of in between the middle, so it's only the back loop that we're picking up, and then we do our stitch as normal. So the instructions, if this was written for me, would be 20 back stitches. And I'll catch up with you at the end of the row. Okay, so we've got to the end of that row, all the way across. We did B stitches, back stitches, stitches in the back loop. And when we look at that compared to the pattern, you can see that they do not look the same. Row 1 and row 2 don't look the same as I currently have row 1 and row 2, because we don't have these stitches coming in front. That's what's going to happen now. So let's look at row 3. So we're on to our main colour again. We look and we can see that we have got some X's now. So these are our forward stitches. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have 5 X's in a row. That's 5 forward stitches, 5 front loop stitches. So I'll join with my standing double crochet. Okay, then we're going to go into our front loops. And again, just if you are not 100% sure, it's the one down in the row below, the one that was previously used for this. And it's what was left from the fact that we went to the back loop. We left the front loop already there. So we've got 5 of these to do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So those are coming in front. That's why I call them F stitches, front stitches. Now you can see that is beginning to look like this pattern as in the picture, because it shows us the finished design, not the one that we're doing as we're going along. So we look at the next stitches and you can see that there are 2 stitches here with no X in them. So no X means it's a back stitch. So we have 2 back stitches to do. 1, 2 back stitches, followed by 6 forward stitches, followed by 2 back stitches, followed by 5 forward stitches, because we're looking at these X's and no X's. So we have completed on our row here 5 forwards, 2 back, which is here, 5 forward, 2 back. We're now going to do 6 forward, 2 back, 5 forward. I will join you at the end of that row. Okay, so you can see we now have those first 3 rows completed, and that does now look like what you're seeing in the actual pattern now. So we're on to row 4, we're on to our contrast colour again. We'll look and we see 3, 4, 5. 5 of these stitches have no X in them, so that would be 5 back stitches that we're going to do. Okay, so we've got our standing double crochet. We're going into the back loops at the top of these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And a lot of the time with these patterns, it makes sense that that's what you've got, because you've really only got the tops that you can go into in these stitches. You can't really go in front of those. There's not really a front loop for you to go into here, so it makes sense. So we've got the 5 of those. Then our next 2 stitches are these 2 X's here, so that's 2 forwards. So we're going into these 2 that are left ready for us. And that's quite the good thing sometimes about overlay and mosaic crochet, is once you've got a pattern established, you can kind of see where the stitches are going to go. Again, next row, we're looking here, again, there's no X's in these 6 stitches here, so these are 6 back stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then we have the 2 forwards to go. Like this, and the last 5 are back stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and our standing double at the end. Okay, so again, you can definitely see now that this is beginning to look like this. Okay, we're on to row number 5, back to the main colour. On this row, we have got 3 forwards, so we've got 3 X's, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stitches with no X's, so those are 6 backs, 2 forwards, 6 backs, and 3 forwards. So we're going to join back on with our standing double. Okay, it asked us for 3 forward. 1, 2, 3. Now this is where you do obviously have to check. The temptation might have been to be in front of these other ones as well, but you need to check. So it's not. We're then going to have 6 back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 back, 2 forwards, 1, 2 forwards, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 back, and last 3 forward. Okay, right, so let's have a look. We'd be on to row 6 now. I'm not going to go through them all, but I'm just going to talk you through it. Look here, 1, 2, 3 stitches, no X's, that means it's back. So we'd have 3 back loop stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 coming forward, 6 front stitches, 2 blank, 2 back stitches, 6 X's, 6 forward stitches, 3 blank, 3 back stitches. You would be following that exactly all the way up through your pattern. There are occasionally times, like for example here in row 7, where there might be very little or no X's at all. There's only 1 X at the beginning and 1 X at the end here. All of these stitches along here would be back stitches in that example. Sometimes you might have the opposite, where all of the stitches might have X's in them, and so they would all be forwards in front of them. But you just have to take the pattern and look and see whether or not you're doing that. So hopefully that's kind of helped you. If you're using one of my patterns, you can always log onto the Facebook page, which is the Funky Loops Crochet community page, and you can ask questions there. Or if you want to contact me, there are details on any of my patterns. Hopefully once you've worked that out, you can see that it's quite straightforward to follow the pattern. You just need to count the X's and you're good to go. Thanks for watching.